Welcome back to video number 3. I want to kind of apologize a little bit for this. I initially recorded this video of taking this front strut apart, but I did such a bad recording that I'm redoing it. So everything's going to be a little simpler to come apart, but I'll do my best to explain it so you can get a sense of what needs to be done once this is off. So this is a front strut that I had taken out of the car, and you saw that in a previous video. And now what I need to do is break this down, disassemble it, so I can send part of it out to get worked on. I'm going to be delivering my front strut housings to a company called Ground Control out of California. They've been a terrific help so far in giving me some support on how to do this and what it is I need to send down to them. So the first thing that you need to do before you take off really any of the nuts securing it is to compress the spring. If you don't, the spring has a lot of tension on it and it's pushing up against these two parts. And you can't, if you were to take the nut off, it actually shoot apart. That'd be really problematic, so you don't want to do that. There's a couple of different kinds of these spring compressors that you see. This is one just from a local retailer called Princess Auto. You can use an impact gun to tighten them up, and then what that'll do is compress the spring, at which point you can start to remove the nuts. The first one that needs to come off is the top nut. On the end here, it's a 20 millimeter socket. You can see here, I don't need the ratchet at the moment because, as I stated, I already took it apart and it'll come off really easy. But I do want to take a moment and just explain one of the things I talked about a little in an earlier video. So you'll see that I have a 6-point socket and a 12-point socket, and you can notice the difference. There's advantages and disadvantages to each. One of the advantages to the 6-point is that it's a better fit on the nut. The 12-point, it gives you more options for fitment, so it can be a little bit easier to get on something, but not as good for long term or for a secure a fit. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead, just loosen up that nut. And they've already have the benefit of having them all cleaned at this point. And then there's just a cap that comes off the top, like so. You can put that to the side. The spring will just slide off. And again, you want to be careful. You don't want to drop it. It could cause issues. I've heard the term widowmaker used because of how much tension's under that spring. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to loosen the gland nut. This is what holds the actual shock in place. So I'm just going to unscrew that, and that slides right off. And you'll notice there's a bump stop here. This is actually was inside. I didn't bother to replace it, but it prevents the shock from slamming all the way down in metal on metal. But once that's out, the shock itself just pulls right out, just like you see here. And we're able just to put that to the side. And then this is the spindle nut. That comes off. This was actually held on with a cotter pin as well. The spindle nut and the gland nut I need for shipping, so I'm just going to keep those to the side here. One thing I want to point out about these spindles is they're not removable. I did a lot of work to uncover if they are removable, and they could be. The problem is you'd have to cut apart your strut housing to get to it. So I'm not sure that they can be replaced easily or without a significant amount of work and know-how to it. I noticed that on mine there's a little bit of rubbing on the metal, and apparently that can be cleaned up. But Just as a note, these you don't want to get damaged, but again, not replaceable. Don't spend the energy trying to figure it out if you can. Okay, so the next nuts to take off are just here at the bottom where the steering knuckle connects to the strut housing. These were kind of a pain in the ass to get off before. So I'm just gonna, but as I mentioned, again, I had to just put it back together so I could demonstrate how to take them off. You know, put some penetrating lubricant on it. They come off pretty easy. So then once that screws are out, that just comes off. If it's been on there for a long time, you'll need to, it'll stick a little. You might not need to put a screwdriver in it. I just wanted to show you, this is where the ball joint connects, which you can see right here. Now I'm going to replace those, which means these need to come off. I haven't taken them off yet. I've read that they can be a real pain in the ass on there, real tight. Those don't look too bad. There's not a lot of buildup or rust in there. I think they'll come off okay. But for now, that's just going to set to the side. So now that you can see that's all taken apart, that's the strut housing. The strut housing is what needs to go down to ground control. They're going to cut it, weld it, clean it up, put a new coil over for it, and we'll have a whole upgraded suspension. I'm going to ship these out today down to the US, and they'll be back in a few weeks.